The Honourable Annette King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My questions to the Minister of Health. Will funding for mental health services in 2016-17 meet all demand-driven cost pressures?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, it has over the past 7 years, but of course we'll only know the actual inflation rate retrospectively for the coming year. Budget 2016 provides an extra $568 million of new money, the highest increase for health in 7 years. When the 2016-17 mental health ring fence, while it won't be known until DHB annual plans are finalised, there is plenty of money within that $568 million for DHBs to allocate to mental health services.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Annette King.
Will community mental health funding receive a significant increase from the 2.5% yearly average increase the government has provided in the last 3 budgets in light of increasing demand and the spate of reviews of mental health service failure?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Well, of course, as I said, the DHBs are free to allocate part of that $568 million as they see fit. But the key thing is, look, across the mental health system, we're seeing more people more quickly with more resources than ever before.
Good answer.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Barbara Kuriger.
Can the Minister confirm that over the last 7 years, through difficult global financial times, that this government provided sufficient funding to meet all population growth and inflationary pressures in vote health?
Order. Order. The Minister saying he didn't hear it, so I'm going to invite... Order. 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 I'm going to invite the member to repeat the question. But there's a portion in that question that is not necessary to the question. It's to be excluded. It only creates disorder. Supplementary question, Barbara Kuriger.
To the Minister, can the Minister confirm over the last 7 years that this government has provided sufficient funding to meet all population growth and inflationary pressure in both health?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, yes, I can. Critics are wrong to claim that health funding under this government has not kept up with population and inflationary pressures. Just listen, this is really important, okay? An analysis of vote health over the previous 7 budgets shows that the total injection of new money has been higher than population and cost pressures for the same period.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Annette King.
Will the funding provided for mental health services in the budget be sufficient to reduce...
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing the question itself because of the level of interjection. I asked for it to cease. If it's not going to cease, I'm going to have to deal with it more severely. Would the member start the question again?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the funding provided for mental health services in the budget be sufficient to reduce emergency department presentations by mental health patients, which have grown by 69% for the month of June for the past 5 years across 18 DHBs?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan
Mr Speaker, I totally dispute that figure, but what I can say is indisputable is that out of that $568 million, the DHBs are free to allocate money to mental health as they see fit. Now, there's some very specific initiatives in the budget to take pressure off mental health. So there's $12 million for mental health responses at an early stage, so that's to support primary care with the triage system, also to create a liaison service between primary care and secondary care psychiatrists. There's also, of course, the $20 million for Canterbury mental health. There's another $12 million to help pregnant women with alcohol and drug problems. That's on the back of the Prime Minister's $64 million youth mental health program. I could go on and on. There's plenty there. Sorry, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Annette.
Well, in light of that answer, if Canterbury DHB does have sufficient funding, as he keeps claiming, why does their recent board minutes state the increase in mental health funding, quote, will not address the challenges faced by the DHB?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Look, Mr Speaker, what I can tell you is that they had an extra $20 million. Just listen to this, an extra $20 million, which we announced a couple of weeks ago. There's also an extra $44 million in this budget for Canterbury. There's actually plenty of money there, and the feedback I get from the chair of the DHB and the CE is actually they're very happy with the injection of funds. So please stop making it up. It's not very helpful for anyone.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Annette King.
Has sufficient funding been provided for mental health services to assist DHBs like Waikato, Capital and Coast and Mid-Central, where reports have suggested serious funding issues, staff recruitment problems and services in significant debt?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan
No, Mr
Coleman.
Speaker, reports haven't suggested serious funding issues. The only serious funding is actually the $568 million extra going in, the biggest increase in 7 years.
Order.
And I can tell you, funding is ahead of population and cost pressures. That's a fact. And you need to stop telling people otherwise. You should take down that silly website.
Order. The Minister cannot bring me into the debate, but equally, there's not much point in asking a question if the member's then not going to bother to listen to the answer. Well then, if the member can hear it, she can allow me to hear it without her interjections. Supplementary question, Marama Fox.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary question to the Minister. What does the Minister say to the many members of the public who turn up to ED suffering depression and under threats of committing suicide and who are turned away?
Well, no,
The
Speaker,
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
I haven't had any reports of anyone being turned away, but what I can say is we're putting in more resources, we're seeing more people more quickly on an ongoing basis. So mental health services have never done more than they've done now, but actually we've got to keep on doing more and more.
Have more funding.
Question number